Hey listeners, welcome back to the Dreadful Dialogue podcast. My name is Elise, and if you are watching on video, you are in for a treat. If you're listening, you should definitely check out the video as well. Okay. I have a new guest with me today. His name is Anteros, and he's going to be sharing some stories with us. What's really cool is he's from Guatemala, and he's going to share with us some folk stories and folk shorts, and he'll kind of give us more details what that means. So with that said, I want to welcome you. If you want to go ahead and let everybody see your actual face.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. My name's Anthony. I am honored to be on your podcast.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that mask. It's a raccoon, right?
Yeah, it's a raccoon.
We'll make sure. So Anthony's your real name, and then you have your name for when you cosplay wearing the mask?
Yeah, so my stage name is Anteros, kind of like Cupid's negative counterpart, but my real name is Anthony.
Anthony, cool. All right, so we'll make sure at the end that we get Anthony to share where his social media is, because he does have some cool photos that he has posted for when he does go and do his cosplay. So Anthony, is really cool. You reached out to me. You're friends with Nelson. If you guys haven't heard on the episode, The People Under the Stairs, the two of you both cosplay, and you reached out to me with a really cool topic. And it was perfect timing because I've been wanting to do something like this. So explain to me what kind of stories you're going to be sharing with the listeners.
Okay, so I'm going to be sharing stories that I grew up with in my country of Guatemala, which is south of the border. Now, most people, when they think of stories from Central America, they always automatically go for La Llorona.
Mm-hmm.
However,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it's crazy, but there's actually much more than that to be told, especially by the grandparents and their generations before them. And we even have something that are like folk shorts or horror shorts. Now, this term may be confusing, but it would be the equivalent of a YouTube short.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So before you even get into any stories, shout out to being from Guatemala. If anybody's listened to the episodes, they know my husband, Paul, he's my producer, and sometimes he's on the episodes with me. His family's also from Guatemala. He was the first one in his family born here. So yeah, that country has a piece of my heart, of course. When did you come here to the U.S.?
So I must have come here when I was small, perhaps I'd say like 7 or 8. But I went back as well. For the whole first part, I was raised with my grandparents. So I grew up with them in their little pueblo where there was really not much to go on around other than carnivals whenever they came around or playing with bugs, pretty much.
So stories were definitely another thing I'm assuming to pass the time, right?
Yeah, stories were definitely something to pass the time. Sometimes it was either a parent's way to lecture their kid, make sure they obeyed, or it was just a way to kind of like keep you from being bored. So you told a story and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I have something cool to tell my friend. You know, next day you went to school, you're like, hey, listen, my grandfather just told me this thing by the river, X, Y, and Z happened. And, you know, that kid then shared the story with you. So it was like those kids with trading baseball cards. For themselves trading baseball cards, we traded stories.
Wow. That's like really cool. And I think storytelling across all cultures is like a universal thing. You can, no matter what country, what culture, and even like what part of the country, right? There's unique stories to those areas. And it's such a thing that people use to pass down from generation to generation. And I love that. Like, I love storytelling. I got my undergrad degree in anthropology, so I'm a big nerd with learning about other cultures. And I think it's really cool that you're coming on and doing and sharing some of these stories with us, because that's part of why I like being a podcaster and why I got into this. Was I like sharing stories. I mean, I do a lot of movies, but it's always cool to hear like my guests' background story. So thank you for sharing these with us. And one more thing before we get into the stories, what part of Guatemala are you from?
I'm from a small part of Guatemala. It's near a place that they call El Tanque Alegre, or, you know, the Jolly Tank. The name is Riachuelo. So it's like within a village, there are even smaller sections.
Mm-hmm.
They call them municipios. So that would be, you know,
Like a municipality, I think, right? In
Yes.
English. Okay.
Yeah, so it would be within that area of Nueva Santa Rosa is what the municipio is called. So that's
Okay.
where I was mainly brought up and raised from.
Cool. Cool. Well, why don't you go ahead and let's get into it? I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm waiting to hear one of these stories.
All right, so one of these stories actually recently circled on a recent podcast of these two guys called Nobody's Podcast. However, they
Hmm.
don't know that that story originally came from Guatemala. And that story is the reason towards why there are no Ronald McDonald statues anymore.
Is it, there's no Ronald McDonald statues in the US or all McDonald's
Uh,
or
like
Guatemala?
it started in all Guatemala, now all the US. There's like, you don't see the Ronald McDonald who's like chilling on the bench, sitting down.
I mean, he's kind of creepy, but I'm sure there's more to it.
Yeah, so the original story before it was on Reddit was that um, it starts off in Antigua, Guatemala. Now,
Okay.
Antigua, Guatemala is a place of Guatemala, kind of like it has history, it has origins. It's a huge tourist attraction because it looks so rural, so not antique, but the way the village used to look like when it was first brought up.
So it's
Almost
like
like
frozen in time almost, right?
it's like frozen in
it's like
time.
a beautiful time capsule.
Yes, it's like a beautiful time capsule in which, now you have like Starbucks and McDonald's. But the reason it comes from there is because they say that there, due to a lot of bloodshed that happened within that area, it is believed that certain areas of that part is haunted. And the story goes that there is indeed this McDonald's out there in Antigua, Guatemala, and it has a Ronald McDonald statue sitting out there. So the story goes that one night, this guy, a drunk, of course, because there's always a drunk in every village and in every story.
Yeah.
So a drunk literally got out of the bar, right after killing his paycheck right there. And he's walking home and he's walking right through Antigua because he lives in the area. And as he walks, he finds the bench and he sits down with the Ronald McDonald chilling the statue. So he
Hmm.
sits down and he starts complaining. He's had one too many and he's had a long walk. So he just says to himself, oh, estoy cansado. Like, God, I'm tired.
Tired, yeah.
And then from there on, it is said that the Ronald McDonald puts his foot down and puts his hand or arm next to him and says, oh, te entiendo, amigo, descansa, which in English is like, oh, I understand you, pal. Go on and rest. And the drunk, seeing this, he couldn't believe that the statue moved. So he screams, he runs, and then he dies of a heart attack up ahead. Now, that's where that story originated from. How it ended
Yeah.
up like on Reddit and it said it happened in 2001, I don't know, because that story was told to me before 2001.
Ah, so we got the real one, folks. We got a local that has told us the story. This isn't him rehashing it from Reddit or from another podcast. That's cool. So who told you that story?
A cousin of mine actually told me this story, which was told to him by his father.
Hmm. So
So
then it's been around for a few generations for
it's
sure.
been around for a few generations, yeah. So my cousin's older than me, but he grew up within that area near. He ended up raising a family like in a place called Amatitran, where there's this big, beautiful lake.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But his father like traveled a lot. His father, went to these elegant and touristic places a lot. So that's where that story came from.
Wow. Yeah, that's a trippy one. I don't know if I'd have a heart attack. I might like pee myself or something if the statue moved. Anybody that's listened to this podcast enough knows I don't like clowns. Certain clowns don't bother me so much. Like it's so weird. I love the Terrifier movies, but yeah, Ronald McDonald, he's got the red hair and the shoes, so he's half scary to me. He's not as scary as like the original. The original Pennywise gets me, but yeah, I would probably lose it if that happened to me. Wow, that was a good one.
Yeah, and since then I also kind of like had this thing whenever I saw like that statue, I was always on my mind. What if that thing moves? Like what if like it also talks to me? Like, should I be happy? Should I be scared? And the
Yeah, I don't
reason
know.
Yeah, the reason why it talked, it is believed that because, like I said, they say that area is haunted. It is believed that for a moment, that statue got possessed by a spirit and
Wow. I
causing
didn't
the
even,
statue to move. So that is like a theory or the belief out there towards, why those statues stopped appearing and why that
mm,
statue per se happened to have moved and scared that poor drunk to death.
got you, got you. So it's funny because I'm thinking back to what you told me at the beginning, how some of these stories were used as a way to kind of get people to, I guess, like behave better, right? Or to have better morals. And again, that's kind of a universal theme I notice like in a lot of folk stories of different countries. And I guess like the moral of the story for that one is maybe like don't be drinking too much. Maybe that's why they tell it as well, like to scare them, like, hey, you got to be careful. You're out there drinking. You don't know what's going to happen to you.
Divine intervention, calm statues is gonna one day try to make friends with you.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know if I know you live in Southern California. In San Bernardino, there's the original McDonald's and they have a museum for it.
Oh,
And
wow.
I don't now I'm very curious if they have a Ronald McDonald statue. I've never gone there. It's crazy. I grew up in, again in SoCal, but I've never actually gone into the museum. I've driven by it, and now you've totally sparked my interest. I'm gonna go see if they have one, and I'm gonna totally think about that story when I see it, if they have one.
You should even ask them, hey, is there a reason why these, were removed or something like that?
Yeah, we need the official McDonald's take on why the Ronald McDonald statue is not around anymore.
Yeah, we need to know. We gotta know.
For yeah, maybe I can get like one of the CEOs on my podcast. Nah, I'm not that big yet.
You will soon. Don't worry. Don't sell yourself short.
I hope. I hope so. I hope so. It's cool. Anything? Any others? Give us another story.
Okay, so I'll give you a horror short. This one
Okay.
was told by a different cousin of mine. So one of my grandfather's other grandchildren, he
Okay.
grew up in a different area of Guatemala. He grew up like near me, but in a different aldea, a little more down. So he told me that there was this cart. So like apparently way back in the day, and the chance of getting an ambulance all the way out into that area of Guatemala being so primitive and stuff, there was no chance. You had to go to, your grandma or that neighbor lady that knew about plants and alternative treatments. Unfortunately, some of these people couldn't be cured, helped, aided, and well, they would just pass on, cross the Rainbow Bridge. So to take care of the dead bodies, usually since there was no trucks, no hearses really, any unclaimed body would be tossed on this cart, and that cart would be pulled by a mule or a horse, and it would just be taken, either to the cemetery to be buried or to be burnt.
Hmm.
Nobody claimed the body. Nobody could really pay for the dirt. So it was believed that sometimes it would be tossed with other bodies together and they'd be burned and
So
just
all the unclaimed people,
all the
which I mean, I
unclaimed
think we
people.
do that in the U.S. at most places. Like I think like once a year, a lot of cemeteries, like that's when they
Just
tend to
incinerate.
yeah, they have they cremate them, and I think they used to call them a pauper's grave because like pauper meaning like they didn't have a lot of money, but I'm sure they don't use that term. I'm sure that's pretty inappropriate now, but I'm sure they just say yeah, like unclaimed, somebody who didn't have a loved one or a person to pay for their, like you said, to be able to pay for their proper services.
Yeah, and unfortunately,
Okay, so they're on these cart. They take them to the cemetery.
yeah, so they're on these carts and they get taken to the cemetery. So, time passes by and eventually it modernizes. There are cars. There's no need for this cart anymore. However, everybody within that region always said the same thing. Everybody within that region, when we would walk by the path, they would point out what used to be where the cart was at. And they would all say, the devil's cart used to be right there. And, I'd be like, what's the devil's cart? And commence the folk short. So the folk
Okay.
short would go like, the devil's cart, it was called that way because it used to be a cart that pulled dead bodies over there to the graveyard. But it was always heard that at nighttime, years after the cart stopped being used, you could hear the wheels of the cart circling, clack, 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 clack.
Uh-oh.
And you'd always go outside, but no one was moving and the cart would stand still. And that's where the story would end. And you then just carry that thing in your mind all day, like, wow, so you could be sleeping across the street and you hear this cart going and going all night. And like, how are these people not terrified? You gotta like exercise this place with bleach and stuff. But it was just
bringing somebody to do an exorcism.
Yeah, bringing somebody to do an exorcism. But it was something everybody within that region told and believed. And it's crazy because if you went to a different region, they didn't know that story. But, if you went to their region, everybody was just like, oh, yeah, no, the devil's cart was right there. The devil's cart, this. And they would all tell the same way. At nighttime, you could hear the wheels of that cart going, clack, 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 clack. So I thought that was also interesting, like, depending which region you go, they also, like, within the region, there are just sub-regions, and they have their own little, like, mini culture within the culture in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Yeah, that one, it's so funny because, like, hearing that one was, like, scarier to me. And it's funny because I'll talk to people who are guests or my friends that are into spooky stuff, and I always tell them, I'm like, oh, no, like, reading stuff and hearing these kind of stories, like, they're way scarier to me than movies because, like, when I watch a movie, I'm like, oh, this is fake. Like, this isn't real. But hearing those, like, it's something about you start to picture it in your mind. And I always feel like your mind is the scariest things. Like, your mind is going to give you, like, the scariest pictures. You're going to hear the scariest sounds. And it makes me wonder, like, how many people would hear that story and maybe they never actually heard the cart, but it scared them enough that you start to think you hear the cart. It's like when you're at home alone at night and your house makes these noises. And you get like that weird, like I always say, like my heart starts to beat faster than it needs to. And you'll really like creep yourself out. So that one creeped me out a little bit.
Yeah. And like the thing is about these things is that they leave an impression on you. When this story was told to me, it latched onto my head. And like anytime I saw a cart, like even if it was a carriage, even if it was like, in like the princess movie, Cinderella, and I'd see the carriage and my brain would just connect. Remember the devil's cart?
Oh, thank you, Anthony. I'm going to have the same thing happen to me. I'm not going to be able to get it out of my head now.
Don't worry.
Yeah, that was such a good word, what you said. It left an impression on you because that's totally what it would. Yeah, I mean, again, even like the common story of La Llorona. I must have heard like 4 different versions of Little Girl. And there was a cemetery, Awamanda Cemetery. It's in the city of Colton. And if you ever drive by that cemetery, like in my area, like that's where everybody says like, oh, watch out, La Llorona hangs out there at night. And it was like that cemetery, like anytime we would drive by there or anything, like I didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't want to like be by there at night. Like, actually, I don't even know if I've ever been there at night, but yeah, that's such a good way to say it. It left an impression on you. And yeah, I could see how that story definitely does.
Yeah, it does something to you, especially like when you're small and you're hearing it, and then you cross that path going home, and you always look, and then your mind just starts forming the image of the cart, and then because the story was scary, your mind forms a scary looking cart, moldy wood, cracked, broken, probably like
I saw like blood stains on it,
like blood stains, Victorian era kind of things.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, it's funny, too, because like even though this is the first time I heard the story and I said it creeped me out, yeah, that story would have been worse hearing it as a kid. I think as an adult, like I've become less scared. I mean, clearly it takes a lot to scare me. I wouldn't have a horror themed podcast if I was scared that easily. But yeah, I'm glad I didn't hear that one as a kid. It would have been even worse on my mind.
You would have never ridden a carriage again.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, we don't really have the opportunity. But I mean, I guess there is like if like for touristy reasons and different things. I don't know. Maybe I might not go on like a haunted hayride now or something because I'll think about that cart. That was a good one. What other ones do you have?
Okay, so there's this other one. Now this one is very much common in all of Guatemala. I know probably like not Veracruz, Venezuela has probably their own version of this creature, and I know Japan has their own version of it, but
Okay.
so we call this entity La Siwanawa. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, this is a woman, like a really beautiful, attractive young lady, but she has the face and features of a horse. Now, her origin story goes, and I'm pretty sure her origin story was made also as a way for children to always, like, when your parents tell you to do something, you do it. But her origin
Okay.
story goes that it changes. Some say her mom left her, watching the beans. Others say her mom left her watching like the maize, the corn, making sure it doesn't overcook or burn.
Yeah.
She didn't listen and she refused. And she sneaks out and goes to a party. And,
Uh-oh.
she comes back and they are burned. And because they are burned, the mother is angry and upset. And the daughter, like they say, le vale madre, the daughter couldn't care any less.
Yeah.
So the mom went to bed hungry, apparently, and, heart stricken. The daughter did not care. And either like some spirit or a deity, something came and said that because of her arrogance, she would forever be cursed by carrying the facial feature of a horse. Boom, birth of La Siwanawa. So the way this story is told to us is that it says that she preys on either men who are lusting, deeply in love, or cheating.
Okay.
My mother said it happened to one of her uncles. And the way the story goes is that so they lived off like in a ranch, uncle
Okay.
and the wife, and the uncle had his mistress, in which he'd always go on the side to see her. He'd always say, "Oh, I'm going out because the cattle got loose. Oh, I'm going out because I gotta make a trip to town." He'd go on the horse, do what he needs to do, and comes back. And all this time, the wife is still deeply fooled. A woman who is like deeply loyal to him, believes every word he
Oh
says.
man.
So it is said that one night he is outside. He's ready to go see his mistress when he swears he hears his wife's name, and his wife is saying, "Hey, hey, the cow got loose. It's going right there through the trees." So he quickly goes. He's like, "Oh, my wife is calling me. She can't grab that cow on herself. I gotta go help her." So he runs, and he's just hearing his wife's voice. This is his only guide. And then the wife is like, through here, hurry. She's through here. So again, the wife goes, like the husband goes running, and he's going deeper into the woods or deeper into the forest or the fields, wherever their ranch was, because out there, like in the areas of Guatemala, there's at a certain time there's no light, and you're
Yeah.
practically
Yeah.
within trees. You're within nature. You're in the middle of nowhere.
So it's hard to probably see even like, within a few feet of you, you can easily get lost, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
it's so dark you can't see in front of you. Okay.
you could easily get lost. And he continues following the voice until he sees this woman, beautiful woman from the back. Of course, her hair is long.
Yeah.
And, first there's that moment where he's, kind of like, "Oh, she's beautiful." Like the typical man seeing a siren. I got to get close to her, look at that waist. But then all of a sudden comes the laughter, like this diabolic laughter. And when she turns around, there's the face of the horse. And she laughs at him and she says, "I fooled you, didn't I?" And that's where that story ends. And then it is said that they found him the next morning, but he was like pale and scared because he could not bear what he had just witnessed. And since then, he confessed to his wife that he was cheating on her, and he cut it off, and he just swore to being a good man after that.
Wow. That's so don't be cheating on your ladies out there, okay? No.
Yeah. That more of the
Wow.
story was like literally, don't be cheating on your ladies, don't be lusting. And like I said, that one is really common out there in Guatemala.
Wow, I've never heard anything like that one. That one was a different one. And what did you say the name of that one was? Can you say it one more time from?
They call her La Siwanawa.
La Siwanawa.
Yeah,
Is that Spanish?
that's Spanish. Yeah, I
That
don't
is, okay.
know. I don't know what exactly
It
it
doesn't have
means.
like a little translation, huh? Because I'm like, I'm not 100% fluent in Spanish. Like I've understood everything else you said, but that was like, I didn't know if it was
Yeah, as far
like
as I
maybe in a
know,
native language or something.
yeah, as far as my knowledge, it does not have like a translation. Maybe like the name comes from a dialect from a region in which
Yeah,
the indigenous people grew up
that
in.
that's what I was thinking. Because there's still, from what I understand, and again, I'm not like an expert. Nobody can quote me. I'm not an expert on Guatemala, but that there is still a pretty large indigenous population there too, as well
Oh
in
yes,
current
there
day.
is.
So yeah, okay. So and that one you said that your uncle claimed
My mom told me, claiming that it happened to an uncle of hers.
to an uncle of hers.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I'm pretty sure my grandma told my mom, hey, this is what happens. And the thing is, my dad also has heard of these stories as well. And my dad grew up from a different region of Guatemala.
So then this is probably one that, like you said, it's been told. There's probably like various versions of it that have been told throughout the country in different areas. Okay.
Yes, that is correct. There's even the whole people swear they've seen this woman. Like, for example, sometimes when I was driving through with my grandfather or my uncle, and then there'd be like, you see that river over there? That's where La Siwanava washes her hair, her long, long hair. Or sometimes it's even La Llorona.
Mm-mm-mm.
They're like, that's where La Llorona crosses because her children were killed right there. So it's always
Yeah.
one of those two. So it's always like either the lady with long hair, which ends up being La Siwanawa, or La
Yeah.
Llorona. And
Okay.
yeah, then there's also like, we have trees out there, sometimes trees with long branches. And they'd also be like, on branches like those, that's the type of branch that the Siwanawa sits at, singing to herself, luring young or lusting man to her. And the moment you're close enough and you see her face, there's no escaping from that.
Oh man, yeah. So I could see them definitely telling this story to young guys, not only to discourage them from cheating, but yeah, the whole lusting part.
Yeah, and I assume also was made to be told to them, so they also like wouldn't go off sneaking at night, trying to see the ladies. Because my uncle himself said, "Oh yeah, I would sneak at night and see my girlfriend sometimes. Like
Yeah,
there
like he
was
was a
no ring
ladies' man.
cameras. Yeah, like there was like I know my mom would lock the door, but I'd like stack the sacks of like maize and I'd climb and I'd hop the fence and I'd like pull a rope. That way, if I came sneaking back in, I just climbed that rope back in. So hence, how these stories were made.
Yeah, I mean, just like going back to the one about the girl where she burned the dinner, essentially, right? It was the
Yeah,
same concept. Like, yeah, obey your parents, but she shouldn't have been sneaking out. Shouldn't have been partying. That's crazy. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Like, I'm sure that there were a lot more stories that were told like that because you're right. Like, we have technology, we have ring cameras. I mean, some parents probably secretly track their kids' phones and things like that to find out if they're sneaking out. Like, thank goodness they didn't have none of that stuff when I was younger, by the way.
there,
Yeah,
there
my
would
mom
have
and dad
been.
listen to this. They know what I used to, they now know what I used to do. I'm in my 40s. I fully admit it. Like,
You all look
they
like it.
didn't tell me these stories. So yeah, I'm almost 43.
And you look young.
Thank you. Um, yeah, so I'm gonna hold on to these stories for my little one though, for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely something good to
Yeah,
tell them.
yeah. Do you have? And I'm sure like what's cool is I'm gonna have my like again shout out to my husband's family, to my in-laws that were born in Guatemala. I'm gonna ask them about some of these because I'm sure they got some other versions of them as well.
And this
Yeah.
one is another horror short in
Okay.
which also you're also left wondering like where did this story come from? It's one of those stories that linger. They're short, they have no explanation, and you're all like, where did they come from? What happened? Kind of like the YouTube shorts again, like the YouTube shorts that somebody just tosses something out there.
Yeah, like what do they call it? The creepy pastas, right? I
Yeah,
think that's
like the
a lot of
creepypasta.
people read those. They read them online, like you said, on Reddit, on YouTube. There's whole podcasts on just creepy pastas.
Yeah, and this one is one that my dad tells me this one. I can't remember where he heard it, but he
Okay.
always tells me that one night a man was walking back home. Again, the stories are always like they're walking home, it's dark, the reason there's like no Uber for the time, the time frame
Yeah.
of the story, the time
Typical theme,
period,
right?
let's say.
Dark and isolate,
Uber
dark
wasn't a
and yeah, you're
thing, telephones weren't
isolated.
a
Yeah.
thing. So the story goes that there was a guy walking home at night from getting off work, and he cuts right through a church. But like by a church, he sees this baby crying. This baby crying. He's like, "Well, that's strange. Somebody must have abandoned this baby right here." But he's like, "That's funny. The baby's not left at the door of the church. The baby is left like 3 feet away from the steps of the church."
Okay.
So he's like, I'll go pick up this bundle that's a baby. Clearly you see a baby abandoned, you're going to wonder what's
You go
going on.
help it.
Yeah, you go
Yeah,
help it.
yeah.
So he picks up the baby and, beautiful little thing, like looking at an angel. And the baby's just,
Okay.
crying. All of a sudden it stops crying and it stares at him. And out of nowhere, the baby says, in Spanish, he says, "Mira mis uñitas," which in English he would say, "Look at my claws." And the baby sticks out its hands from the bundle, and it has these claws almost as if you're looking at the devil's hands. And
Oh,
he looks at the claws, and when he looks back at the baby, he does not see a baby, but he sees some sort of deformed being that he's holding right before him. And it says that like the creature slashed at him, and he just threw it, and he started running. And as he ran and he ran, and he could hear almost an inhuman laughter echoing as he ran all the way home. And that's where that story ends.
wow. Okay. So that one, right as your time. Have you ever seen Rosemary's Baby, the movie?
Yes, I have seen Roseberry.
It gave me those vibes when you were like, it was gonna go up to like we never see Rosemary's Baby. They insinuate that like what it looks like because it's the
The
devil's child.
Antichrist.
Yeah, the Antichrist. So like right when you're telling me that, I'm thinking like that. But I thought right away the baby was gonna like it wasn't gonna be a baby at all. I thought it was gonna do something like if people saw me on video, I was going like this. I was like, oh, like I was covering my mouth. I was already ready to be like, oh no, what's gonna be in that bundle? And then you're like, oh, it's a really cute angel baby. I'm like, okay, it's not bad yet. And then when you said the claws came out, I'm like, oh, yeah. I went. What do you think the moral or the reasoning that people were telling that story? Because I can't figure that one out.
That one I cannot figure out for the life of me. It's just something
Just to scare people.
yeah, it's just to scare people because there's the baby was not left at the door, it was left a few steps away from the church. So I guess like it's insinuating, oh, if it couldn't step on holy ground, it's evil.
Oh, you're right. Okay. Yeah, maybe that's why. Okay. I didn't think about that. I
You
hadn't
know,
even that okay. That
and when
yeah,
I
because you
first
said it
heard
was
it,
you did emphasize it was a few feet away from not only from the entrance, but from the steps to the entrance.
yeah,
Okay.
from the actual steps, and like I said, at first I didn't think about that, but then as I remembered the story, I'm all like, it was away from the steps. It wasn't even away from the door; it was away from the steps to the church. So
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, well, that should have been a sign that, if somebody didn't bother to leave the baby at the door of the church, there was something evil to begin with.
Yeah. But then you'd be the evil person if you didn't even like
Yeah.
actually check and make sure like is this a baby? Like,
Yeah,
oh
you'd be
man.
like the unholy
Because
person.
what if it was an actual baby?
Yeah, you're all like,
Oh man.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that one definitely, that one I actually scared me for the longest. Every
Really.
time, like, because I remembered it, and the way my dad said it, because you know how parents have a way of exaggerating things. And the thing is,
They know how to scare you the most because they've known you literally your whole life, so they know what will tap into your fears. Yeah.
oh yeah, they do that, and especially my dad. My dad had this habit. I remember, because out there in Guatemala, growing up, at some point when it was dark, it was dark. If you're lucky, you're near a street light, and that's the only light you get. You don't mind running the electricity bill, and you leave your own night light. But other than that, most people didn't like that. Either candles or your own little flashlight. So when it's dark, it's dark.
Yeah.
And some of the houses are made from like metal or tin or something that always clanks at night. Some of them are made from cement. Some of them are now nicer, but way back then, the houses were creepy on the inside. And I remember I'd be like, Dad, I'm scared. And he'd be like, oh, don't be scared. I'm right here next to you. Then he'd be like, but what if I wasn't your dad? And I was this kid with really long nails and really sharp teeth and 4 sets of eyes. And I'm like, Dad, you're scaring me. And it's like, I'm not your dad. He'd always do that. And it would get me every time.
Yeah,
Like,
you're like, don't be scared. I'm here, or is it me? Yeah,
well, like,
yeah, people are good. It's like that's how siblings are too, right?
yeah,
Like I don't
that's
know
how
if you have older
siblings are.
siblings. My older, yeah, they tell you things to scare you and just get under your skin.
And you actually believe it, like then because you're a kid, you actually believe it. So,
Yeah,
and the thing is, my dad also sometimes say he would work a lot. Sometimes he wouldn't get a chance to trim his nails that night. So he
yeah,
always do the thing where he grabbed me with his nails like this, and he's like, "These are my claws right here, see?" And it would just get me every time.
yeah. So out of so you've told I think like 4 stories now. Is that so? Out of those 4, that's the one that scares you the most so
That's the one
far.
that scared me the most growing up. That's the one that
Wow.
always left me that one impression. Always because I could just imagine something going from a cute baby to a demon.
Yeah. So you're
And
probably scared to have. I don't know if you have kids. You're probably scared to have kids or date a girl with long nails.
most likely, I'll be like, damn, the longest. Oh man, I remember that story my dad told me.
Yeah, yeah. You might look. You might be like, girl, I'm into short nails.
I don't do with like extension nails.
Yeah, yeah. Some of them are long. Wow, Anthony. So I really liked all those stories. That was really a treat. I think what I really appreciate the most about these stories is that they all come from your family, right? They're ones that you've heard. I love that you pointed out, like, oh, this one's been on Reddit or this one's been on a podcast, but you're like, no, I got the legit ones. Like, let me tell you the ones that my parents told me growing up.
Yeah,
So
the
thank you for
origin.
that. Yeah, the origin behind them. So Anthony, you wore a mask earlier.
Yeah.
Tell us more about this mask that you were wearing and why this mask is so important to you that you
Okay,
were like, hey, I gotta wear it.
so this is the raccoon mask. This mask came from a uh, a mask maker. He goes by the name of Infernal Effects on Instagram. Now,
Okay.
the cool thing about these masks and how I came across it, I came across this mask maker when I went to Midsummer Screams in Long Beach last
Yes,
year.
love it. Yeah.
It's
Oh, I was there too.
it was my first time there, and the thing is, I went there originally with a different mask, a mask I had bought on eBay, and it was made out of plastic latex. However, since it was hot, the mask warped out of shape.
Hmm.
So I went there and I'm like, I'm gonna buy another mask. And I saw this mask maker, so I bought a mask off of him. It was a different mask, a skull mask. But I saw that he had some new masks on his page, so I bought raccoon, which you see right here, because I thought it was
Yeah.
really original. I've seen other animals. I've seen wolfmans. I've seen people do cats, even mice. But I've never seen a creature like this, like a dumpster raccoon.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he makes these masks specifically with these straps right here because they actually latch onto your head. The front is actually comfortable, and he always does the movable jaw right here.
Yeah.
So the importance of this mask is because I went to an event called For the Vibes. They also
Yeah.
have their Instagram page, and they always meet in alleys in downtown LA. So the alley looks sketchy, but then when all these other cosplayers and scare actors show up, they start putting lights, they start putting DJ, photographers show up. It gets really lively. So
Yeah.
when I went there, before I had the raccoon mask, I had a possum mask. And I go
Okay.
there right after work and I put on like an all black suit because it's all I have, like a black jacket with a hoodie on it. And I'm trying a different mask, and I'm like, oh, people aren't paying attention to it. And my friends are like, why don't you try possum? I'm like, are you crazy, man? It's a possum, hard. No, just put the possum on. Okay, I'm like, fine, I'll put the possum on. So I put the possum mask on, and I start walking, and quickly, one guy started, hey, Possum, I got to get some pictures of you. And then another photographer, hey, Possum, get by the dumpster. I need you to get by the dumpster and do this. And then another one, hey, Possum, I need you to get in the dumpster and like poke your head out. And
Oh
like
man.
all these photographers left and right are pulling me to the side because they've never seen a possum mask like that.
Yeah.
So from there, my friend Nelson, he has his character, which is Satan's little helper. So
Yeah. He's
he's
the one that
also,
did our episode, People Under the Stairs.
yeah, the one that the people on the stairs episode. I went with him. He's the one that told me about that event.
Okay, cool.
So he gives me the idea that him and another friend of mine called Rebecca gives me the idea that I should create my own character.
Yeah,
And
because that's original, the raccoon.
yeah, it's really original. I have the raccoon, I have the possum, I have another one called Ricky the Rat. And I was working on an evil Cupid, which I have not perfected yet.
Mhm.
So I make my Instagram page in February, and I'm thinking, well, since evil Cupid is the new character I want to bring out, that's the name I'm going to go with. But I need something that was Cupid's counterpart. I didn't want to use Cupid or Eros because that's practicing thing. I'm like, I need their counterpart. So that's when I found out that Cupid did have a counterpart called Anteros. So I'm gonna
okay.
go.
I didn't know where the name came from.
Yeah, it's Greek. So Eros derives from the word like erotic. So hence Eros, hence Cupid. So Anteros is just like
Okay.
anti-Eros. So anti-Cupid.
Gotcha.
So I'm like, okay, that's going to be my next character. I haven't perfected it yet, but if you stick around on my page, you will see that character pop out once I'm finished working out the details. Cupid's the heart maker. I am the heart breaker.
Hey, you better be careful though. That story, about being too lusty, you're being chasing too many women.
Oh, you're right. I don't want her to like get a passport and end up here somewhere in America looking for
Yeah,
me.
she might come into the States. Yeah. That's really cool though. I don't personally cosplay. I went to the same Midsummer Scream you were at last year. It was so hot, so I understand about the latex mask. They don't have the air conditioning on there, I think. But I'm always really impressed. I love taking pictures with the cosplayers, and it's always cool to hear like how much work they put into these, and like you said, creating your character and your persona and your outfit and figuring out what works and doesn't work and what's comfortable because they wear them in these events and they have them on like for hours
Yeah.
sometimes. And yeah, like and you have to compete, deal with the weather as well, whether it's hot or it's cold. And I mean, some of them they're doing cosplaying like in the middle of the summer, and I'm like, oh no, like, so I think it's cool that besides sharing the folk stories that you shared your different masks with us.
Yeah.
So you said you have a social media page, you have Instagram or
Yeah. Or so you guys could follow me at Anteros 2025. So that's ant like an ant and then Eros EROS 2025. And as you'll all see, I'm barely starting out, the Instagram page, but hopefully it'll keep on growing. Hopefully I will like perfect the persona and you'll see me lingering around at every con event after that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what Nelson told me that he was giving me a whole rundown of events that he goes to.
Oh yeah, he
So
gets
yeah, hopefully
paid
we'll
to sponsor it too.
nice. Yeah, so hopefully we'll see you at some of those events, and yeah, so make sure you post your stuff up. I like looking at everybody's different things within the genre that they're doing, whether they're cosplaying, they're other podcasters. It's cool to see everybody's got their little thing that they've got going on with it. I love the community. So again, thank you so much, Anthony. I really appreciated having you on. Thank you for sharing your stories with us. And I know we've already talked before that you said you still have several stories, many more stories. So we'll have you back on
So,
at some point.
I'm honored though. I'm honored that you had me on your podcast. It's my first time being on the podcast, and I myself, I'm a storyteller by nature. I love telling stories. People tell me I should write a book, but from word to the page, when you say it, it's amazing. It's interesting. But when you start writing it, I get writer's block a lot, but I'm still toying with the idea. Maybe I will get all those stories on the book and I will hopefully be able to publish the book.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we'll just see what happens.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that. It's hard. I mean, even this podcast, it was something I thought about for it took me 2 years to just do it. Like I had the idea and I had somebody that was gonna be my co-host and just it didn't work out. But it was just a commitment. She was hard for the person to commit,
Yeah, I
with work
get
and all
you.
their other things. And then I thought I had another person and it just wasn't vibing the way it needed to vibe. And I was like, you know what? My husband's like, just go for it on your own. Like, just do it on your own. And thank goodness I have him in the corner to help me out all the time. He does all my editing and stuff. But yeah, it's hard. Like if you have something you want to do, you just do it, and I don't know. I mean, in the words of one of my guests that I've had before, Kristen, she's like, oh, she has her own podcast. She's like, it's my little baby podcast. I'm like, this is my little baby podcast. Like it's growing each day. I'm getting better and I hope it continues to grow. And the same with your cosplaying. And I hope, one day you write that book because I really enjoyed your stories.
Thank you
You
so much.
articulated them well for us. So yeah, so we'll go ahead and we'll head out. And I just want to say to everybody, if you enjoyed this, you guys can also check out my Instagram is at Dreadful Dialogue Podcast. I also have a blog on my website, dreadfuldialogue.com. And with that, thank you again, Anthony, for being here, and everybody else, have a good one.
Thank you. Good night.